Good morning. This is Mike Tingatella, and today I want to continue with an extension of what we did last week. Last week we looked at the question of whether we are in the end times, and we reviewed a number of passages that we understand. Jesus said, "No one knows the day or the hour except for the Father." But then he gave a number of signs, and there were signs in other books as well. And we concluded that if the return of the Jews to Israel in 1948 began the clock ticking on a generation that would see all of these signs come to a culmination with his return to earth, then we concluded that we were probably no more than 20 years away from the return of Christ. And that will usher in the end times. In fact, the end times will be ushered in before that with I believe, the rapture of the church. So we're going to review certain concepts. We're going to review the question of what the rapture of the church is, what the tribulation is, and Christ's second return in terms of the timing with respect to those events. And so I'd like to recall for you in the Gospel of John, chapter 14, when Jesus said, "I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go to prepare a place for you, I will return to take you with me, so that where I am, you may be as well." So that was a promise that he made to us, and that was a clear reference to his removal of his church, the believers in Christ, who will be removed with him up to heaven prior, I believe, to the start of the tribulation. The Apostle Paul gave us some additional details in his book. 1 Thessalonians 4:15 says, "For this we say to you by the word of the Lord, that we who are alive and remain until the coming of the Lord will by no means precede those who are asleep. For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of an archangel, and with the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. Then we who are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and thus we shall always be with the Lord. Therefore, comfort one another with these words." So that's a promise that Jesus himself gave to us, and the Apostle Paul confirmed that he received directly from the Lord. There are a number of viewpoints as to exactly when that event will take place. Some believe, as I do, that it will be before the tribulation period. Others say no, it'll be in the middle of the tribulation period, and still others say no, it will be at the end of the tribulation period and at the same time as the second return of Christ. I believe, as I said, it is a pre-tribulation event, and that we will all be taken up to heaven, and soon thereafter will occur in heaven the marriage of the Lamb, the marriage of the bride of Christ, which is his church. Back on earth, there will be a series of events soon after the rapture of the church. That event, I believe, will so shake up the world, and is probably the only event that would allow or cause the whole world to turn to one charismatic figure and give him the power to rule over the world. And that person in the scriptures is portrayed and is referred to as the Antichrist. It is believed that the Antichrist, right at the beginning of the 7-year period, will make a peace treaty between the Arabs and the Israelis, and the world will be convinced that this man would be leading them to the Holy Grail of world peace. But midpoint in the tribulation, he will take up residence in a newly renovated, newly constructed temple, declare himself to be God, and the second half of the tribulation period will be a period of terrible, terrible wars and an assault upon Israel. At the end of the tribulation period, when it appears that all will be lost, Christ will return and will defeat the enemies of Israel and will usher in his 1,000-year reign here on earth. At the end of the 1,000-year reign, there will be, we are told, a new heaven and a new earth where God will live in his triune nature with his people here on earth. And we are told in Revelation 21 that there will be no more suffering, no more pain, no more death. He will wash every tear from our eyes. And Jesus said, I am the Alpha and the Omega. Behold, I make all things new. What a beautiful, beautiful picture of the end of the age and the end of the end times and the beginning of eternity. I'd also like to review with you some differences between the rapture of the church, which will involve Christ coming down in the air and calling us up, and his glorious appearance, which I believe will be at the end of the tribulation period. For the rapture, there are no signs before the rapture. One will be taken and one will be left behind. For the glorious appearance, the second coming of Christ, there will be many signs. In his Olivet Discourse we reviewed last week, how there will be wars and rumors of wars, and lawlessness will abound. There will be pestilence and disease. There are many, many other signs that we were given in the scriptures that will take place before his appearance. In the rapture, Christ comes for believers, and in his glorious appearance, he brings his believers with him down to earth. In the rapture, all Christians are taken up. In the glorious appearance, no one is taken up. Jesus comes down with his saints. After the rapture, there will be in heaven the bride of the Lamb, and there will also be a Bema judgment, which is a judgment of rewards for the Christians who were taken up, and each are given rewards commensurate with the good deeds that they had done. At the end of the glorious appearance, there will be a great white throne judgment for non-believers, and that's not a pretty picture. The rapture could come at any time at this point. We know that it would be after the return of the Jews to Israel and all of the other signs, including in Daniel, people running to and fro and knowledge increasing. But the glorious appearance cannot come until the end of the tribulation. The rapture is before the day of wrath. The glorious appearance is after the day of wrath. The rapture is a time of joy. The glorious appearance is a time of mourning. Listen how Zechariah describes that moment when Israel, and in fact the whole world, will see Jesus in his return. And I will pour out, this is Zechariah 12:10, and I will pour out on the house of David and on the inhabitants of Jerusalem a spirit of grace and supplication. Then they will look on me whom they have pierced. Who did they pierce? Well, obviously Jesus. Yes, they will mourn for him as one mourns for his only son, and grieve for him as one grieves for a firstborn. And so, as I said, the rapture is a time of joy. The second appearance is a time for some of mourning. After the rapture, the tribulation begins, and after the glorious appearance, the millennial rule of Christ begins. The rapture precedes the marriage of the Lamb. The glorious appearance follows the marriage of the Lamb in heaven. The rapture, only Christians who are taken up will see him. In the glorious appearance, everyone will see him. And so, with that as an overall description, I wish I could get this to you in a form. It's not going to work. All right. But at any rate, that's sometime in our future. We believe that it is not too far into the future. We believe that there is no generation that has more reason to believe that the end times are imminent than our generation. Please go to my website, www.michaeljtingatella.com, and take a look at my book, The Beginning and the End. I'll be talking about that book next week. There is a second edition that has just been released that I would like to describe to you. There are also some other resources on that website, and hope you'll give it a look. Hope you have a good week, and hang in there with all this crazy stuff in the world. Put your faith and your trust in Jesus Christ, and all will be well. See you next week.